On March 24, 2025, news spread out in West Dublin. It was said that heavily armed Garda officers had undergone a sting operation to take out a criminal organization who had been on their radar for quite a long time. Who were the targets? They were Ireland's most wanted drug traffickers, a crime gang known as the Family. Simultaneously, over 1,000 miles away on Spain's eastern coast, the Guardia Civil and officers from Europol moved in on a warehouse in a choreographed strike months in the making. Within minutes, 12 men, including the gang's boss and his top lieutenants, were in custody. The takedown was swift and surgical, 6 arrests in Ireland and 6 in Spain. Within hours of the raids, law enforcement officials were hailing the operation as one of the most significant organized crime arrests in recent times. A global game of cat and mouse between authorities and the Family had finally come to an end. But how did a small Dublin gang, once little more than local drug dealers, grow into Ireland's biggest drug cartel? The roots of the Family can be found in the working-class neighbourhood of Ballyfermot in West Dublin during the late 1990s. Under the leadership of the driven Brian Gangland and his brothers, alongside seasoned criminal Derek O'Driscoll, the group began to systematically dominate the local heroin market. They were ruthlessly effective. They enlisted weaker residents and low-level users to serve as supervisors of stash houses and mules. The gang also targeted those who had previously recovered from addiction, using free samples to lure them back into drug usage. Then, using their rekindled dependence, they forced them to work as lookouts and drug runners in order to pay off debts. Although they faced a significant challenge in 2001 when 25-year-old Brian Gangland was arrested with €1.9 million worth of heroin and sentenced to 6 years in prison, this setback was only temporary. By the late 2000s, Gangland was released and returned to the drug trade, more astute and cautious than ever. During this developmental phase, the main leaders of the Family operated in Europe, acquiring knowledge and connections for multi-million euro drug transactions. But how did the Family grow from a small-time criminal organization into the massive empire they later became? In contrast to more prominent gangs that showcased their riches and authority, the Family opted for a subtler strategy, functioning discreetly to evade the watchful eyes of law enforcement. This tactic enabled them to expand their empire without attracting unnecessary attention. By 2010, the Family's presence in West Dublin's criminal scene was unmistakable. They had leveraged the economic growth in Ireland and were ready to exploit the expanding cocaine market. Their distinguishing factor was their low-key approach, avoiding sensational gang conflicts or notorious killings that could bring scrutiny. They did not shy away from violence. Instead, they used it in a calculated and purposeful manner. Violence served as a means of control, helping them maintain authority over their territories and communicate unambiguously with both competitors and allies. Betraying the Family would lead to fatal repercussions, and they made sure that the entire drug network was aware of this. One such instance occurred in February 2015 when police raided a property owned by Jason Rowe, an ally of the Family, in the Bluebell Industrial Estate. The findings were startling. A hoard of 2 handguns, 3 submachine guns, and many rounds of ammunition in hidden compartments, together with drugs worth €2.69 million in plain sight. This operation helped authorities understand the extent and intricacy of the Family's activities. As the Family's power expanded, so did their business strategy. While heroin continued to be their primary source of income, they branched out into cocaine, cannabis, and other substances. Following the notorious Regency Hotel attack in February 2016, which sparked the Kinahan-Hutch conflict, the Family observed the violence closely while discreetly strengthening their own position. Their dominance was not limited to drug trafficking alone. The Family established a stronghold over significant neighbourhoods in Dublin, such as Ballyfermot, Clondalkin, Ronanstown, Kilmainham, and Talot. In these communities, they developed a social economic framework that allowed their influence to permeate all facets of daily life, affecting everything from the local drug trade to businesses and social services. They primarily targeted young people as recruiters, luring them in with promises of luxury, fast cash, and designer clothing. But behind this alluring facade of prosperity was a dangerous trap, for these recruits often became disposable assets that could be readily replaced if caught by the police. The primary leadership was able to remain protected by this arrangement. By the end of the decade, the gang was delivering over 50 kilograms of cocaine a month, which was a huge amount that generated about 20 million euros in revenue annually. As the money started rolling in, the family quickly realized that money laundering wasn't just necessary, it was also dangerous. They needed a way to clean and move their profits without drawing attention, so they set up a seemingly legitimate logistics business. It did more than just help with transporting drugs. It became a front for investing and hiding their illegal earnings. Car dealerships and auto repair shops became some of their favorite covers. On the surface, they looked like ordinary businesses, but behind the scenes, they were funneling dirty money through the books. In June 2017, the Criminal Assets Bureau carried out a major raid, targeting 5 dealerships tied to the family's operations. It was the first big blow in what would become a much larger investigation. Authorities seized more than 1 million euros worth of assets, including high-end watches and luxury cars, Mercedes, BMWs, the kind of vehicles that stood out in the neighborhoods where they were found. A significant illustration of the family's wealth emerged in October 2020, when authorities conducted a raid on a secluded rural property believed to serve as the family's hidden cash reserve. Acting on intelligence, the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau seized 4 million euros in cash concealed in a house near Ballybunion, Kerry. A concurrent search in County Lewis uncovered additional bundles, bringing the total cash confiscation to around 4 million euros, one of the largest in the history of Ireland. Referred to as the Gangland Bank by the media, the operation was overseen by 46-year-old associate Darren Hoey, who owned the Kerry stash house and was apprehended at the location. Investigators disclosed that profits from the family's drug operations in Dublin were routinely transferred to this remote site to evade detection. Earlier in 2020, Hoey had been stopped while driving through Kerry with 700,000 euros in cash, which led authorities to discover another 2.8 million euros stored in bags at the safe house. A ledger later revealed that from July to September 2020, nearly 18 million euros had been funneled through Hoey's activities for the family. These astonishing figures indicated a drug trade volume that rivaled even the notorious Kinahan cartel. Hoey was subsequently sentenced to 7 years in prison for his involvement, marking a significant setback for the gang's finances at that time. Nevertheless, the family's leadership remained resilient and adaptable despite these challenges. The family's reach extended beyond Ireland, establishing a strong foothold in Spain, which became a crucial entry point for drugs into Europe. Spanish authorities uncovered that the gang operated in at least 3 areas: Valencia, Murcia, and Malaga. Their main operation was centered in a warehouse located in Castellón de la Plana, Valencia province, which functioned as a distribution hub for drugs intended for Ireland. From this location, cocaine and other narcotics, frequently obtained from Latin American cartels, were sent out using cover loads and clever concealment techniques. The family's smuggling operations featured advanced communication strategies, but were straightforward in their implementation. They used encrypted phones to organize routes, drivers, and drop-off locations, while relying on established methods, concealing illegal goods in vehicles with specially designed compartments, some of which could only be accessed through hydraulic or electronic systems. To avoid detection, they often employed cloned license plates, replicating the registrations of legitimate trucks. By 2021, the family emerged as the most powerful drug syndicate in Ireland, surpassing the Kinahan cartel in both scale and influence within the country. This development would have seemed improbable just 10 years earlier. The Kinahans were well known internationally, backed by substantial financial resources and violent enforcers. However, a series of significant events favored the family, enabling their ascent without igniting a full-scale gang war. During this period, both the media and law enforcement began to recognize the family's newfound dominance. Having effectively displaced the Kinahans in their home territory, the family gained control over the distribution networks for numerous smaller gangs throughout Ireland, forming partnerships with groups in North Dublin led by Mr. Big and others in different areas. With the Kinahans increasingly sidelined in domestic affairs, the family established its own direct supply routes to South America and continental Europe. Central to this operation was a strong foothold in Spain, a long-established entry point for drugs into Europe. In September 2024, French cybercrime investigators pulled off a major win. They broke into Ghost, a heavily encrypted messaging app that criminals had counted on to stay under the radar. Much like the EncroChat operation in 2020, authorities quietly tapped into the system and spent 8 months reading messages in real time, all without tipping off the people using it. The people using it had no idea their messages were being watched in real time. What they uncovered was massive. The platform was being used by organized crime groups across the globe, and many of the messages led straight to the family. The operation, codenamed Kraken, saw Europol team up with the FBI, the Australian Federal Police, and law enforcement agencies from several countries. It quickly became one of the most ambitious and far-reaching investigations in recent years. To everyone's surprise, Ireland had more ghost users than anywhere else, around 100 active devices, many of them tied to major players within the family. By mid-September, investigators had enough to move. On September 16, 2024, officers launched coordinated raids across Ireland. About 300 Gardaí stormed 27 properties. What they found stunned even the most seasoned detectives. 16 million euros worth of cocaine and cannabis, 126 phones, 42 of them running the ghost software, and a network that was more organized and widespread than anyone had guessed. Armed Garda units conducted a significant raid on 6 properties in Dublin and the east of Ireland on March 24, 2025. The residences of the family's senior executives were the primary targets. During the early morning raid in West Dublin, Brian Gangland was caught off guard at his house and put into custody without a fight. His brother Philip was also taken into custody, along with 4 other prominent members of the organization. Additionally, a 6th suspect from Ireland, responsible for managing stash locations, was arrested later that same day. At the same time in Spain, the Guardia Civil carried out arrest warrants for individuals linked to the family's Spanish faction. Raids occurred in the Murcia and Malaga areas, as well as at the primary warehouse in Castellón. 6 men were detained, all deemed crucial to the gang's supply operations. The Spanish raids yielded significant evidence and assets, including 35,000 euros in cash, 12 luxury vehicles, and 4 transport trucks, many of which had concealed compartments filled with drugs, all altered for smuggling purposes. Overall, around 30 million euros worth of drugs were confiscated during the operation. Following these coordinated raids, the family's powerful organization was thrown into chaos. Millions in cash were confiscated, hundreds of kilograms of drugs were removed from the streets, and the leadership was imprisoned. A dramatic downfall for a group that had long viewed themselves as invulnerable. And that will be all for today's video. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications for more criminal gang stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.